We would like to start off today's Flyers pregame show with a public service announcement from Chris Terry.
Everybody, Bundy here. I'm with
Bobby.
And
Morgan. All right, so these are two great Flyers fans that are here today. My last minute plea to everybody is to tell any Flyers fans if you can get extra tickets, come down here, because you got these scumbag Ranger fans, and they try to come down here on Black Friday and take over the building. They did last year, and I just want to tell you from experience, when I played in the Garden, it was a great atmosphere, but the fans didn't make any noise. It was quiet. Parking sucked, of course. So don't let them come down here and have easy parking, easy access.
Don't let them do that.
Right. Hang with Bobby and Morgan, two great Flyer fans right here. And
Here we need all the fans.
stay away from the scumbag Ranger fans that they can't even go to their own home games because they can't get into their building because it's too hard to get to.
Yep.
Go Flyers.
There he is. That providing public service, Bundy, using your platform for good.
You know what? I saw them when I got out this morning, Jason, and it was I didn't even know Bobby and Morgan, but they were there to lend a hand, and I just wanted to specifically let everybody know, if you see any scumbag Ranger fans, make life difficult. Of course, don't make it difficult. Just let them know they're in the building and that this is Flyers land. No violence.
You wave to the ones. You wave to the ones that are in here.
See, there's a scumbag Ranger fan here. But you know what? This is our Black Friday game. All right, they don't have a tradition like this, so they got to come down here and play the Flyers games, and that's fine. I'll just let you know this is our building.
Do me a favor, Bundy. Spin your mic a little bit. You're a little muffled. I think it's
Smitty the way he set it up. Is that better, Jace? Yeah.
When in doubt, Smitty's
blame
fault.
Smitty.
Al, let me ask you this first question out of the gate here. You know, in all your years playing here, who was your chief rival that you liked playing against the most? I mean, obviously the Devils were a team. I mean, they were a hard team to play against. With what they had, the Rangers. I don't think the Islanders probably in your time were much of a threat. So you look at those really fun teams to play against. Usually they're a threat. Who was it for you?
Yeah, you know what? Probably Pittsburgh. You know, with they had Yager still, and they were still a really good team. The Devils, of course, I would say was the regular rival for guys that would say my era. You know, they won 3 Stanley Cups, and we had gotten to 2 semifinals against them. New York, there is something cool about playing New York and playing the Rangers and you know, being in the Big Apple for games and stuff. So, you know, really, really lucky to have played in this division. The inconsequential teams at my time were the Capitals and the Islanders. In that era, even though the Capitals went to the finals a year after we did in '97, they just weren't a team that had consistently good clubs every single year. So, but the Metro is always spruced up, and I think the close proximity makes it really interesting when you get good teams on the season because it's a good battle, and you get it's not a long ride. Teams are pretty amped up to play each other.
How about Black Friday? This is a yearly staple here. I think it's been every year that I can remember going back into the 90s. I feel like there was, obviously we missed the lockout year, which was strange around here, but it's always been some point on Black Friday. Sometimes we had to move it earlier or later because of TV restrictions and whatever, but this has always been kind of, I don't know, it's felt like the unofficial start to the heart of the season every year.
It does. It almost feels like the second half beginning with this game in a lot of ways. Because, the number with the American Thanksgiving and people that are in the playoffs at that time, I don't know how much that holds true to this day. I think it's good that you're in a good spot at Thanksgiving, but I really feel like this kind of does turn a page a little bit. You get into the meat and potatoes of an NHL season. This is great, guys, to have this game at 1 o'clock today. I love that. I hated when they moved it back to 5 o'clock a couple times. This game here should always be a 1 o'clock start, and I hope that Jonesy keeps that tradition rolling. I don't think we should ever go back to 4:30 or whatever it was before.
I think we've had a couple that were at noon even, but I like the early.
Yeah, there was a stretch there where we had to dodge a national TV window if we weren't the national TV game, and they're also doing this in Boston, and the people in Boston think they own this time slot, and they don't. So it was always a little bit squirrely there, but yeah, this is the time to do it, and it is the league's Thanksgiving showdown, even though it's not national TV. It is the big game of the week, game of the day here, I guess, and a busy day around the NHL. So obviously, it's a good matchup for it.
Yeah, but let me ask you about the Rangers and the guy they have behind the bench, because you were a broadcaster traveling with the team when Peter Laviolette came in here. He relieved John Stevens in December of 2010 or 2009.
Yep.
And he came in, didn't get the team turned around immediately, but eventually everybody felt, that was a better team than they had shown. And obviously, they sneak into the playoffs in the shootout and go on the run. And you were here for several years with Lavi after. He is always good in year one with a team that's got talent. What is it that makes him good in that situation?
Well, I think he gives a different voice, right? Like he comes in and he certainly has clout. He's won a Stanley Cup back in 2006 with Carolina. He's a guy that's taken veteran teams and done a lot of good things with them. So it makes sense for a guy to come into a team that is on the rise again, top in the Metro with the Rangers, and they do have high-powered offensive players. And Lavi is a guy that's, even over his time here, as I was broadcaster, used to say, if you're looking for someone to coach defense, that's not me. And he said that openly as a coach. Right. He does not. That doesn't interest him. He has guys and systems that work defensively for it, but he goes, I'm an offensive preacher of the game. I believe outscoring the other team significantly is how you win. That's not saying he's tossing a defensive system out the window. He's just saying in terms of his coaching, he likes caring about the offense. And when you look at this Rangers team, guys, it has a plethora of offensive weapons that the Flyers will have to deal with here today if they want to get the points. Just 3 regulation losses for New York all year. And that's why Lavi does a great job with new teams. His voice will wear away over time like it does everywhere.
Yep.
But that's the life expectancy of a Peter Laviolette coaching experience. It's not a voice that will go on for 10 years. It can't. Because you can ramp up those speeches, and I've heard a lot of them behind doors. They're great to hear, and you get a lot of rah-rah out of it, but they do die over time. But he can do a lot of damage to other teams on the team he's on early in his tenure with groups, and we saw that here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, he always was an offensive side of coaching, but he always had a soft spot for the guys that came in and played hard and, kind of stirred things up a little bit. I remember what a big Zach Ronaldo fan he was, for example. So he definitely will bring a team to the ice that can score in bunches and also will make your life difficult, even if it's not the most defensively sound team you'll see.
Yeah, and again, but he'll get guys to play beyond what their roles are sometimes and play harder and get to the front of the net. And he'll take really good, skilled players and get the most out of those guys. And the New York Rangers have, some serious high-end talent that I think Peter Laviolette will have a lot of fun with, especially on his power plays.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of depth, too. That's what, to me, makes the Rangers look like a team that could go on a run come spring and into summer, is because of that depth that you need in the playoffs, for sure. And they got goaltending. Bundy, let's talk about the rebuild that the Rangers had. They sent that letter out, and I think it was 2017. They were going to take a step back, and they were going to trade some pieces. They traded McDonough, they traded other pieces, and they said they were going to rebuild and do it the right way. Now, their rebuild went very quickly. And, they're a team, to me, that is an example of the way rebuilds can happen, because they didn't strip it down to the studs. They didn't trade Mika Zibanejad. They didn't trade Chris Kreider. They went out and they got Jacob Trouba. They get Adam Fox, who forces his way there. They know Panarin's coming, and they know Shesterkin's coming. So it was a bit accelerated, but they're not a team that stripped it down to the studs and was trying to lose games to rebuild and get high draft picks. They did get 2 of them, though. They got Kakko at number 2 and Lafreniere number 1 overall. They had a little lottery luck, but those guys haven't been really the catalyst to why they are where they are.
Actually, that's a really good point. And when you look at those guys, like 1 and 2, Capo went the year before, Lafreniere, who went number 1. It's not been them. It's still been the top-heavy guys of Panarin, Kreider, who kind of had dipped for a couple of years and then lifted it back up again. You've had you mentioned Trouba, who's really developed into a leader, a minute-eating type of defenseman from coming from Winnipeg and free agency. And now they got a guy like Blake Wheeler, who's actually a very good defensive forward as well. The offense is way down from where he once was, but they're an interesting group. And even Kakko, it's unbelievable when you look at his numbers. He got 3 points, right? And that was a guy that people thought would be an absolute offensive weapon in the NHL. You know what, Jace? I've said this before, and when you look at the league and the amount of teams and the amount of players, you can flip the script pretty quick. We're in 2023, so again, it gives you an idea of a rebuild. And I'll be honest with you, the Rangers' rebuild was complete long before this year in terms of acquiring players. And imagine if those 2 guys that they did take 1 and 2 actually had another gear to them. The Rangers would be that much better. So, it's interesting. But when I look at the league, there's too many teams, there's too many players that it's not such a short, little small window that you can't rebuild and get players in with a more competitive attitude, a more desire to win, to be better players. So there's a lot of them. There's a lot of interchangeable parts and a lot of different pieces that you can plug in. And if you do it right with the right manager and the right coach sending the message, you can do things pretty quick. And that's the part of the hope and optimism I have for the Flyers. We look at the Flyers now. Some year, no one knew what they were going to be. Now here they are, up in the, top of the standings, holding their own. I don't know where the future is going to send them, but this is a team we're calling a rebuild in September, and all of a sudden, we look at them, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
You mentioned too, Bundy, as Jason mentioned it, that Adam Fox and Artemi Panarin obviously are a very big part of that rebuild, and they're two guys that the Rangers didn't really even have to go try to coax them to New York.
No wooing.
They wanted to come there, and obviously they've got New York City there, and that's something that nobody else has. I'm just curious from a player perspective, what are the things that potential big name free agents are going to be looking at when the time comes for Philadelphia to want to bring some of these guys in? What can they offer them that's going to make them want to come here and try to go for things here? Is it just having a good plan in place? Is it facilities, places to live? There's all that stuff that goes into
Travel.
Travel's a huge thing. I knew that my first year playing. I don't know what everyone else took so long to figure it out. But and then I went to Dallas for a cup of coffee, and I found out just how brutal the travel really is out in the West. But you know what, Brian, that's a really good question, and I think the answer to that is sustainability. When a player looks at a free agent team, do you want to go in and say, oh, I have a chance to win right away, which you might not. But you might have a chance to win 2 or 3 years down the road, right, with the team. So you want to look for teams to advancing what their agenda is, making their team better. And you got to get it right if you're free agent picking. I mean, imagine if you went to Edmonton and said, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to win one Stanley Cup after another. No. They're a brutal hockey team with no goalie and 2-star players. They will fill their building every single night, but they will not win anything. And maybe that's the formula for Edmonton. They like their money up there, and I don't blame them. It's a Canadian market. But in terms of that, if you're a free agent and you said, I'm going to go there because McDavid's there, that's no guarantee of anything. He's been in the league almost 10 years now, and there's been nothing like the start of Sidney Crosby's career. It's dictated. So, again, I'm looking for a team that's a good team, that has a GM with a good vision, wants to continue building, and those are questions I'd ask if I were a free agent right now coming into an off season. And certainly the way the Flyers are playing is encouraging. If you are, there's going to be, I'll tell you the other part, because the coach is here. There's going to be some guys that wouldn't want to play for Tortorella. That's a fact of life around the league, and no one's going to tell me differently. There'll be veterans at 32 saying, I don't want to deal with that guy. And so they'll pick somewhere else. And that's a fact of life, and that's not the first time that would have happened. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think when you're looking at Philadelphia right now, there's way more positives than negatives.
Also, a lot of times free agent players are married with kids, and they want to make sure the family's in a good spot here, too, from a living standpoint and how the organization treats them as well. You did mention Edmonton. That team is box office, Bundy, but not box score.
Well, I mean, it just shows you, though. And, I know Kenny Holland gets a lot of the brunt for having those bad goalies in there, but when you look at what he's done with Detroit, right, he had a star team with kind of 2 mediocre goalies. I no disrespect to Mike Vernon or Chris Osgood, but they weren't Patrick Waugh or Marty Brodeur. Now, Vernon, give him credit, the guy was just a winner. He knew how to win. He won in Calgary, won in Detroit. Great, and I take nothing away from those guys. They beat our butts. But they didn't have a world-beater goalie.
Yeah.
And until they got Hasek, right, later in his career when Babcock was there. So it's odd, but Edmonton's going to have they got to make decisions, because if you look at the way they are right now, this is a great example. You got a guy that could be looking at 12, 13 years in the league without having a real seriously deep playoff run since probably his first or second year in the NHL. I can't remember one of those years they went to the semis, and the future looked so bright for Edmonton. But tell you what, you don't want that to happen to your franchise, and
the league doesn't want that, Bundy.
Well, they don't. No, they want guys.
They don't want him in Edmonton either. But
no, I know. Well, yeah. Well, that's the the worst kept secret in all of hockey.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the Canadian market stories, but believe me, if the league could move every one of them, they would. Just from a financial standpoint, I mean, that's the way it is.
And I guess I'll ask you for a player perspective on this too. I'm completely speculating here, but the word on the street is that a lot of players have a lot of Canadian teams on their no trade lists, and I'm sure that probably handcuffs you when you're trying to add a decent goalie or trying to add a defender.
So you're saying players don't have Canadian teams on their list?
No, they do. So for
no
Kenny Holland on their no trade list, so Kenny Holland, maybe it's harder to get a goalie than we realize if you're trying to get a veteran that's already got a no trade clause in his contract and he doesn't want to go to Canada.
That's what I was asking you. Yeah. So they're saying there's and listen, I mean, this is a human nature thing for me. What would be the one reason I wouldn't want to go to Canada? It's too cold. In the summer, and you're also paying more. This is a whole different show. The taxes are crazy. It's cold. It's harder to get around. I mean, those are little family things that wouldn't matter as much to me. I grew up in Ottawa, but they're things that professionals will talk about when you have long-term contracts coming in, and it's no secret, guys. It really isn't.
I saw somebody put on Twitter the other day that if William Nylander goes to free agency and gets $12 million in Toronto, he'd only have to get 8.7 in Tampa to have the same
right. Because there's no state tax. Sales tax or income tax.
Same with Texas, right?
Yeah.
Like
Nashville.
Texas, Vegas,
Nashville.
Yep. Absolutely. This Ranger team, I was looking, kind of doing some work on looking at the Rangers, and one thing I notice is the Rangers and the top teams in the NHL, Bundy. All the top teams are right at the top of the list in least amount of goals allowed per games played. Bruins number 1, Rangers number 2, Vegas number 3, Kings 4, Canucks 5. Just so happens they're the top 5 teams in the NHL. Fans love seeing goals, but preventing goals is the most important thing.
Defense wins championships.
Yep.
I mean, people say it's nice to score, see offense, but ultimately, you go back and ask Vegas, last year they had unbelievably good defensemen that played well in their own zone, moved the puck efficiently. Yeah, those are reasons why teams will trend upwards, and teams that can keep the puck out of the net, get the puck out of their zone with efficiency, play physical, but not stupid in their own zone. They're going to have good teams. They're going to have good seasons and good teams. And there's Jason, hearing that stat, I'm not surprised a little bit about it.
Me neither.
Yeah, the Flyers are in the middle of that pack, I think, somewhere. Last I looked, 14th, 15th. But that's the reason that when John Tortorella came in here last year, that's where he started
11th.
Fixing things, was the way the team played defensively, not just the defenders, the entire 5-man unit on the ice, that the way they attacked defense. I mean, they were talking the other day about that how that rebuild started. I'm not even sure this team worked on the power play last year until about December. They were too focused on defensive play, and that's the way he wants to build it. And I assume that's why, because that's the way you put yourself in the best position to win.
Well, I think they should probably continue working on their power play.
Yeah.
I don't think we should stop there, Smitty, now, but let's continue the work on that thing.
Now that the defense is down.
Yeah. Speaking of power play, and you look at the Rangers, they have one of the best power play players in the league, and Artemi Panarin. He's got 9 assists on the power play, 2 goals, 11 of his 26 points. Guy he's feeding most often there is Kreider, who you mentioned before, Bundy. He's got 10 goals as well, 6 of them on the man advantage. And this is a team in the Rangers, I don't want to compare them to Edmonton because Edmonton stinks, but this Ranger team, you do not want to put them on the power play today. That's not going to be a good recipe. So you got to move your feet in all zones today.
Yeah, the separation, too, between the points of a guy like Artemi Panarin, even down to the next guy, Kreider, is 11-point lead over the next guy in terms of scoring. So, and I don't need to know anything more than to know that guy's lethal on the power play.
Yep.
You have got to keep him in front of you. You've got to stare at that logo on his chest, have a good stick. But this is one of the games, Jace, for me, you got to watch the seam passes because they can be really dangerous, and the Flyers will have to do a good job. They're going to have control the motion and the penalty killing. You can be aggressive, but not overly aggressive, and that'll be a real key in this hockey game today, how they address it. Sometimes there's no problem, when if a team wants to move the puck around the perimeter, you're not going to get it out sometimes. But I do feel that if the Flyers can really put a little bit of pressure on skill guys without giving their whole bodies away and selling off, they could have a good afternoon here today on the PK.
And I guess, too, that just taking that back around to the Flyers side a little bit, that, I feel like that's one of the places in the game where the skilled players shine the most. Obviously, Edmonton is no good right now, but their power play is 34% because of those stars, and that's the one thing that the Flyers don't have right now. It's no secret. They don't have a 50-goal scorer on the roster at the moment. They don't have huge offensive threats. So they just kind of deal with what they have. And it's almost like they got to figure out a way to get a greasy power play out there that gets some garbage goals rather than the typical power play where you got guys just sniping from the circles and stuff like that. And, they do need to keep working on it, but I think they're a little handcuffed as to how far they can work on it with the personnel they got.
Yeah, but again, and you know what? But there's no. If the Flyers' power play is trying cross ice passes or cross box passes or tic tac toe plays, they shouldn't be. They should not be doing that at all. This is a pass and pump it power play. I mean, I say pump it, get it to the point, find a lane, pump the shot, and go after the rebounds. If they're trying anything where they're being cute, then that's not going to work.
I think they may have started the season like that, but they've definitely settled back to that, to what you're saying now. Putting two guys in the slot and just firing it.
Well, that's it, because we've had enough samples to see if that works, and it doesn't with this group.
Yeah, just with this group.
Cool. So, yeah.
That's the thing, too. Got to get that puck to the net. Got to find that lane. It's easier said than done. Everybody in the building goes, shoot! There's no lane to the net, people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what, though, Jace? If there's always a seam, and I know what you're saying, and I watch it sometimes because I'm yelling pump, that you don't even have – it doesn't even have to be automatically on the net. If you go within a foot or two of it, you can hit something. There's rebounds that come off the boards. You got to get it in that area. And if you're going to wait for the perfect shot, it may not happen. But moving it around 15 times to find the perfect shot isn't going to work either with this team.
Yeah, no doubt. We're going to join our radio audience in just a couple minutes, or a couple seconds, excuse me.
Okay.
As soon as Joan Jett's done. Joan Jett, 93.3 WMMR.
Everything or Alice's Restaurant. I think we're getting that tomorrow.
Is that right? The Arlo.
We have to kill some time tomorrow. It's a late puck drop. So.
Back to the island, Smitty?
I you know what?
It's nice scheduling.
The only thing better going to the island once a week is twice.
Alrighty, 1-2.
Well, isn't that negative?
I don't know how people live there.
That's right. It is Flyers game day as the Flyers get set to take on the New York Rangers and continue a tradition of Black Friday hockey in Philadelphia. The Rangers sitting in the top spot of the Metropolitan Division. Only 3 regulation losses, a record of 13-3-1. Flyers sitting in the 4th spot right now, 21 points through 19 games, 10-8-1. It's Jason Martinez, Brian Smith, and Chris Terrian and Bundy. The stage is always big on Black Friday. There's going to be a full building here today. Yeah, there's going to be some Ranger fans, but the Flyers got to use the energy of the building and find a way to get off to a good start. That last game did not score the first goal, and that's been a detriment to them. When they score first, they're 10-1.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Rangers fans will be here. When you can't go to your own home games, you have to go to ones on the road. So you know what? Yes, that has kind of become, when you look at a team as you're getting to 20 games in, what works, what doesn't. And it's not that absolutely, and it wouldn't be the first team. They score first, they have success. When they get scored against, it's a complete reversal. So, you know, again, is there any way to manufacture or create a first goal? I wish I could tell you there was. Yeah, some nights it's just sheer luck. But when you get that one hump lead in a game, it changes the way you play. Believe me, you have a lot more confidence. You can make a little bit more of a play knowing that you have a cushion. You don't want to abuse that privilege either, but the Flyers have done an amazing job getting the lead, holding the lead. Carter Hart has been terrific, and their goalies have been when they have a lead. That being said, they're also going to have to find a way to claw back from times that they don't get the lead. I thought last game against the Islanders, they did a great job staying with it. Maybe not initially, but over the course of the game in the third period, they gave themselves a chance to win. But it does show you how important scoring early is and having a lead in a hockey game. A lot of those teams, I don't know the stat, I bet you it's over 70% will go on to win their hockey games that night.
It's been kind of weird the last couple of years. It's been almost a tale of two situations. Last year, I think the Flyers, didn't they lead the league or something and comebacks from 2 goals down or something like that for a while? They were doing that. Now they were leading the league in first period goals, 25 before the Islanders game, which is whereas last year at that point they had 11. And I guess it's just a matter, isn't it, of learning how to play both ways. I mean, because like you said, sometimes you're going to score first, sometimes you're going to score second, and you've got to figure out a way to be able to handle both situations. It sounds like they're pretty different.
Yeah, and again, don't get me wrong. When you're scored against, it's not like it's so dire that you say, oh, well, you know what, we got scored against, we're going to, we're done. That's not the way it goes. You never feel like that. You never feel like you're down a goal. But when you're up a goal, you kind of feel like you're up a goal, and it allows you to play a little differently. So I think from that standpoint, the Flyers should be excited here today. There should be no reason they shouldn't have a great start.
Right.
Come out and put pressure on the Rangers. Again, no matter what people think of this team or who they are, who they've been, who they're going to be, they're a different team than last year. And they're feeling good about themselves. They're feeling like a more confident team, that they're bought in a little bit to what Torts has done. And they certainly have shown that through the standings. That being said, I'm excited for this Flyers team to show the level of compete that I don't think the Rangers have seen in the last 3 years prior to this season. Yeah. So it's an opportunity for the Flyers to reintroduce themselves to this team. There's been a lot of pain at the hands of the New York Rangers the last few years, some terrible beatings. Oh. And if there's ever a day to repatriate that and send it back to them, today would be a good start.
Yeah, I remember, what was it, the 9-goal game where Zibanejad had
never ended.
Point.
Yeah, oh my goodness. It's crazy how the tables turn too, because one of the I think the last Rangers home and home before the pandemic stopped, back when the Flyers were playing so well that year, they hung 8 on Henrik Lundqvist. I almost felt bad. Like we shouldn't be doing this to this guy. He's a Hall of Famer and stuff.
I don't feel bad.
Every goalie deserves a shellacking every once in a while.
And then coming back into the next season, where we were playing everything within the division, saw him 8 times, I guess. It's gone the Rangers' way. So it's about time to flip the tables here.
Well, one of the things, Monday, today, this is a really good goalie matchup today. Carter Hart is the 7th in the NHL with a .915 save percentage. Shesterkin's doesn't have otherworldly numbers, a .908 save percentage. Really, Jonathan Quick does. He has a .940 and he's 5.01, but doesn't get the start today. But one of the things with Shesterkin, Bundy, is he plays the puck extremely well.
Yeah.
If you put pucks behind his net and you don't lob him into, the old cross corner dump, something like that, he's going to start the breakout for him. As a player, they got to be cognizant of that, because he is like a third defenseman back there in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you know what? For a goalie from overseas, they're not known for handling the puck and moving the puck as well as the Russians, and they're usually terrible. I'll tell you what, you can't just look at him as he's like a bad puck moving Russian goaltender, because he's outstanding at it. Good puck stopper. He's another guy too. When he feels it early, he feels it all game. If I'm the Flyers, the way you get to this guy is make an absolute mosh pit of the blue paint when you have an opportunity, and do it early. Like, make it an absolute gong show in there. Even if you have to take a compete penalty early, do it. You're going to let these Rangers know, like, Trouba thinks he's tough and he's playing a lot harder than he ever did. Go back there and make life difficult on their defense.
An old Slayer 80s concert style mosh pit at the crease of
just pulled that right out, Jason. I hadn't used that one in years.
That's great. Igor Shesterkin. All right, we've got Tim Saunders and Todd Fedoruk standing by with the countdown to face-off, and that'll be followed by all the Black Friday first period action between the Flyers and the Rangers. A tradition continues here. Stay tuned. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.